Planting seeds and Easter eggs in movies years in advance is kind of Marvel's thing with their cinematic universe. It could be verbalized or an image on a screen or even a statue or, something in the background that alludes to something else. Marvel's been doing this since the beginning, and it's exciting as a fan to pick up on these when you see them. As of this filming, there is one more movie for phase 3 on the board, which is Spider-Man Far From Home. And outside of that, we're not quite sure, other than, some directors who have been chosen, some cast who have been picked for some films that are coming back. The rest we have to piece together from these other references and Easter eggs and speculate as to what might exactly be coming down the road. So that is exactly what we're going to do today. Before we begin though, let me thank you for watching JLS Comics and pressing play. If you like videos like this, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you want, the subscribe button as well. I do upload new comic book, movie, superhero, anime content every week. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into our video. So I really want to focus on Marvel Studios and the cinematic portion of the MCU, but Marvel TV has made their own references as well. For example, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV show, they've had mention of like Man-Thing and this guy named Wendell Vaughn, who goes on to become a really powerful cosmic character named Quasar. Okay, let's change gears really quick over to cinema. From the moment Nick Fury appeared at the end of the credits in 2008's Iron Man to talk with Tony Stark about an quote-unquote Avengers Initiative, which we know now, by the way, is named after Carol Danvers' Air Force call sign, Marvel has been teasing us with footage. But in the same movie, a less subtle, less in-your-face tease happened and showed up 3 years before we got his own movie. That was Captain America's Shield. That would be 2011 when we finally got to see that, although the shield itself showed up another time. The other thing that happened in 2011 was the release of the first Thor movie, and in that movie we actually got a brief glimpse of the Infinity Gauntlet. It's ever so brief, and in the background during a scene with the ice giants and the Cask of Ancient Winters, right there you can see it. Okay, so back to Cap. In Captain America the First Avenger, we got a super quick look at Human Torch back at the 1940 Expo, but not any Human Torch. This was the original Human Torch, the android named Jim Hammond. It's a funny nod here because at the time the rights for Human Torch and the Fantastic Four were with Fox, and it was Evans himself here in this film now, Steve Rogers, who played the Human Torch. It would have been too meta, too much of a Inception moment if it had been Johnny Storm. So indirectly, you could take this as our first nod that Namor might be around the MCU. Back in the 40s, when the Marvel Comics was still called Timely Comics, Human Torch and Captain America actually teamed up with Namor to form a group called the Invaders. They had their sidekicks too. Cap had Bucky and Torch had Toro. They formed their own group. They were called the Sentinels of Liberty. Later, they were called the Young Allies, but there was another squad, the All-Winter Squad too. Bucky has, of course, showed up already as we watch this evolution to the Winter Soldier and then teases of White Wolf. Torch will show up in the Fantastic Four once they're fully integrated, and then Namor as well. I was going chronologically from the beginning to the Endgame, but let's talk about Namor for a minute. Namor is a tough character for Disney to use. You see, just like the Incredible Hulk, his rights lie with Universal Studios. They have a highly lucrative theme park using characters whose rights they bought when Marvel was really trying to come back from bankruptcy. Marvel can't use the characters in a solo movie. That's why Hulk shows up in Avengers and Thor Ragnarok, why he got his World War Hulk and Professor Hulk arc through other people's stories, ensemble casts, not his own. Same with Namor. They can't do a solo Namor movie, although some think that production is back with Marvel, but the Universal still retains what's called right of first refusal as well as distribution. It's why they do the ensemble team up films to sort of circumvent this clause. Namor will most likely show up in either Black Panther 2 or Doctor Strange 2. Why? There's a couple reasons, but I'll get to that when we get to Endgame. For now, let's remember back to 2010's Iron Man 2 Part Dos. Massive tease with the Shield map. The map teased Wakanda an entire 8 years, nearly a decade before the release of the Black Panther movie. We also get to see another important marker, among others, which are cool, on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, right here, Atlantis. Where does Namor live? Atlantis. During 2014's Captain America Winter Soldier, one of my favorite of the MCU films, by the way, Cap, B-Dub, and Falcon took Agent Sitwell to a rooftop and basically forced him to explain what Project Insight was. During that exchange, Sitwell mentioned Bruce Banner, he mentioned Steve Rogers, and he mentioned 2 other people. One was Stephen Strange. Kevin Feige took his time, and Doctor Strange didn't show up in his own movie for another 2 years. But here's another one. He also mentioned, unnamed though, somebody from Egypt, somebody from Cairo, and one of the most popular heroes hailing from Egypt is none other than Moon Knight himself. Moon Knight has yet to show up in anything other than print media and animation. Actually, going back to Marvel TV for a minute, Steven DeKnight and Netflix did talk about Moon Knight for Daredevil before ultimately deciding on Typhoid Mary. Well, the not quite Typhoid Mary yet, Alice Walker, who was played by Alice Eve. In 2018, Kevin Feige on the Marvel Studios side was talking to a website called Screen Rant when he said he does want to use Moon Knight, but it still might be another 10 years before he can. So end of phase 4, beginning of phase 5, potentially. The Nova Corps first appeared in the MCU in 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy. Somebody noticeably absent? Richard Rider, aka Nova. The fact that the Nova Corps exists means that Nova is out there somewhere. Okay, so now let's talk about Avengers Endgame. Fair warning that this will contain spoilers about the movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and add this to your watch later queue. Come back to it when you've actually seen it. Alright, so fair warning again. Early on in the movie, Black Widow was talking with Rhodey, Okoye, Captain Marvel, Nebula, Rocket. They were talking about their cosmic adventures, reporting in on events to keep track of what was going on. Rhodey was busy tracking Hawkeye in Mexico. Okoye mentioned something very interesting. She said that there were earthquakes under the Atlantic Ocean off of the African coast. So why would this be named? Why, you're asking yourself? Well, one theory is it was just natural disasters. Perhaps the Earth was itself adjusting to the snap. The other theory, the one that I like, that's where Atlantis is located, home of Namor. The fact that Okoye reported on this and Namor's history with Black Panther made him a great candidate to appear in Black Panther 2. I still think that Doctor Strange 2 might also be where he shows up. As I've mentioned before, Doctor Strange director Scott Derrickson tweeted out and actually really quickly deleted an image of a book called Fear Itself, The Deep. What's on the cover of this? Doctor Strange and Namor. Here's some more potential Easter eggs that you might have missed from Avengers Endgame. The Ancient One teased that with a stone removed, nasty dimensional threats can now come through. This can only mean people like Kang or Nihilus or even the return of Dormammu, but we've already seen old Dormy, Kang, especially with time travel now a thing, and Annihilus are very likely possibilities. Alright, so one thing that we do know is that Marvel is doing a movie based on the Eternals. The release date's been announced, but the director and early casting like Angelina Jolie have already happened. Marvel already introduced us to some cosmic beings, the cinematic version of Ego the Living Planet, for example. Ego is what's called a Celestial, and the Celestials appeared in the second issue of the first volume of the Eternals comic books. All the way back in 2016, Carl Mordo showed Doctor Strange something called the Staff of the Living Tribunal. This probably went over most non-comic book reading fans' heads, but this is a reference to another celestial being named the Living Tribunal. He judges the cosmos and hands down this like multiversal justice. He's a really cool character with 3 heads. His story is tied to the Beyonder, the One Above All, and to Adam Warlock. Adam's cocoon has been seen a couple times, Guardians 2. It's highly expected that he'll show up at some point. Obtain the stones maybe. In the comics started his own Infinity Watch. They spread out the stones so nobody would be able to gather them again. Or maybe he'll just show up and be judged by the Living Tribunal itself. Nebula mentioned that when Thanos was done, he would want to retire to the garden. Now this one's a little bit out there, but I like it, so bear with me. What does a garden need? A garden needs a gardener. There is an ancient elder of the Marvel Universe called exactly that. The Gardener. He seeds planets and basically does the opposite of Thanos and the opposite of Galactus, and he is tied to Starhawk. Remember that name. At one time he wielded the Soul Stone for himself, and just something to think about. Okay, so Guardians. There's 2 possibilities for Guardians. One is more on the nose and one is sort of a jump. I'll share them both with you. So at the end of Endgame, Thor rejoined the Guardians and he referenced something very interesting. He said, we are the Asgardians of the galaxy. He's from Asgard. They're the Guardians. He combined it. Remember I mentioned the portmanteau in a previous video? That's exactly what that is. It's a possible tease. It's also possibly fan service. But here's another possibility. Remember the Starks, how they love each other 3000? It's a very specific number to choose. There is another Guardians team called Guardians 3000. And who's on this team? You have Martin X, you have Yondu, Vance Astro, and remember this name? Starhawk. I'll leave you with a couple more. Over in Spider-Man, his best friend is Ned Leeds. In the comics, Ned Leeds goes on to become a villain named Hobgoblin. Will that happen? I'm really not sure at this point, but the seeds are definitely planted. Same with Cassie Lang. She ultimately becomes a hero named Stature. Monica Rambeau was the little girl at Maria's house in the Captain Marvel movie. She grows up to be another version of Captain Marvel. While not Kate Bishop, Hawkeye did call his compound bow savvy daughter Hawkeye. Kamala Khan is supposed to debut in the Captain Marvel sequel. She becomes Miss Marvel. See where I'm going with this? Maybe Young Avengers or something like that, another team. These seeds are all planted. Just like the gardener, Feige and his team are planting seeds that may not even pay off for a couple of years. They like the build up, they like the slow burn. So that's all I've got for you today. What are your theories? What other characters and teases have you picked up on that we missed here today? Let's continue that conversation down in the comments below. If you're here and haven't already done so, go ahead and hit the like button and then the subscribe button so you'll be part of this rapidly growing JLS Comics family and be one of the first to know each and every time I upload new content. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.